Hey, welcome back to another episode of Compliance Clips with your co-hosts, Rick Morgan and John Farquhar. And today we have a very special guest, the illustrious and wonderful and actually good looking now that he's wearing a J shirt,
Oh,
Phil
Patrick.
Fletcher with the TTSAO. And if I'm not mistaken, Phil, I believe you are the president of the TTSO organization.
Once again, John, you are never mistaken. I am.
Cool. So, Phil, can you give us a quick background of you and the TTSAO for our listeners, in case those that don't know what TTSAO stands for?
Well, TTSAO was constructed almost 35 years ago now,
Wow.
and we had a number of the leading school operators in the province at that time.
Wow.
And right now we're at 55 different campuses throughout
Wow.
the province.
Nice.
And we are the oldest group because we strive to have the best outcomes for our students and to maintain uh, compliance and competency throughout the courses so that we can turn out the best end product. And that's part of really what we want to do. And I was running a school in Mississauga about 10 years ago, and I was asked to come on the board at that time to be the treasurer. And so from that point on, I was the treasurer for a number of years, then vice chair. And then when the previous president was retiring from that post, they decided to allow me to take over and
Cool.
to be in charge of the organization here to continue what we're trying to do for providing the best drivers for the industry out there and overall for road safety.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Well, I know I can tell from, or I can say this from the insurance side of the business that I've been in now 20 plus years, is that TTSAO is a nice high benchmark that when it comes to good quality schools, those that are in the TTSAO program are recognized by the insurance industry. And you have a program that is recognized by the schools in the TTSAO group as being much more than what we call the MELT program. So it's a much higher number of hours and criteria that needs to be.
That's right. Our standard course, which we consider the gold standard, is almost twice what the MELT training requirement is. We go to 200 hours instead of the 103.5.
Sure. Cool, cool, awesome. So we're going to have a chat today about some interesting topics relating to new drivers, existing drivers, legalities around it, enforcement, compliance, and all that good stuff when it comes to drivers with a Class A license. So I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Mr. Morgan, because he's just chomping at the bit today to share and bite into some of these juicy bits that he wants to talk about. So I am going to try to be quiet. We've already got a bet that that's not going to happen, but we're going to try and see what happens. So, Mr. Morgan, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, John. And Philip, thanks for joining us today. Let's get right into it. So, driving schools, they have been front and center of the headlines lately. We've had a whole bunch of really interesting news articles and explorations of what's going on in what I'm starting to refer to as the sordid underbelly of trucking these days. So, we've got truck training companies, excuse me, that have been identified as, for lack of a better word, cheating the system, putting out drivers who aren't qualified. What can you tell us about some of these schools? Because for those who may not be as familiar as John and yourself in the structure, TTSAO is a small portion and a best practices part of truck driving schools. You mentioned the difference between MELT and TTSAO syllabus. What's the difference, and why do we find ourselves where we are right now with, well, they say 300 to 400 drivers who are unlicensed, but I can't imagine that's the limit of this particular situation.
And that is probably a growing number based on things that I'm hearing throughout the industry and what's happening behind the scenes. And I think we're going to find that more of that will happen. I know of a case where I was asked to talk to a school about them joining TTSAO years ago when I was treasurer, and so I arranged to meet the school. And the operator of the school would not allow me to go on their campus or see anything. He wanted to meet me in a parking lot up by the airport. And that school eventually, well, of course, we did not accept them or even take a serious interest about an application. And that school eventually lost their accreditation. And those drivers that had gone through there are some of those 300, 400 drivers that have to retest to keep their license.
You
So
didn't go
there's
get the manila envelope in the parking lot after dark with a.
no, but somebody else might have done that. There's a problem there.
Yeah.
So we see that there are schools that operate in a non-compliant manner. I had an instructor that I hired came from another school because he told me of what was going on behind the scenes there, and it was not to his liking at all. That he felt they were cheating, having the students sign everything before they even took their training. So they signed off on each portion of their uh, theory, yard, and over the road training before even getting in the truck or doing anything. And he left that school, and that school subsequently was closed by the ministry. And they had 24 to 27 trucks out on the road. So just imagine the number of people that were going through there at that time. So
Yeah.
there have been some pretty huge things going on here with the lack of oversight and the lack of internal compliance by a number of the schools. And as I mentioned, we had like 55 campuses. There are now about 265 campuses in Ontario that send their students to the test centers.
So who's responsible for this? Who has that oversight ownership?
Well, this is an interesting dichotomy that you bring up on that, Rick, because we have two ministries involved in this. There isn't one direct ministry. The MTO sets the rules and parameters, and the actual governance and compliance is maintained by MC, the Ministry of Colleges and Universities. So they take the oversight portion, but their whole degree of oversight involves all the colleges, all the universities, plus all the private career colleges, which we fit into. And they are looking at the paperwork in almost all cases when they come to do an inspection, but they've started to do some outside inspections now on the yards, which is a degree of compliance up from what it used to be. So that's gotten a little better. But we really think it would be wise to have just the MTO involved, since they're setting the parameters. They know the ins and outs of it. They do the work on it. We're working with MTO right now to reconfigure the MELT course to try to clean up some of the gaps and spaces that have been causing problems over the last 8 years now. And that is still going to be a project in the works until 2026. And we hope that we can get some measurable improvements on that at that point. And maybe the MTO will start to take some degree of oversight in that. We would like right now to have the MTO participate in doing the inspections, where they would inspect the yard, the vehicles, the maintenance records, because all of this is important to having safe roads and having people trained properly to go out on the roads and share those roads with the rest of our families, our friends, and our community. So we need to have proper compliance and oversight coming through on that. And that's one of the big things that the stakeholder group is working on right now.
So I heard you say over 200 total schools, and I heard you say 27 trucks for one school, and I heard you say taking till 2026 to really get a grasp, a handle on where we are. What confidence level do we in the industry have that the graduates that are coming out from schools are competent right now?
Well, we're still in this gray area where there is not any clear indication of the oversight being performed to a more diligent degree, because we haven't really enacted these changes yet. We're still in sort of the semi improved area there, where there's some work going on behind the scenes, where we're trying to get a new melt a prescription to come forward with what the course load should be and how that should be performed, including now we have to put on a lesson plan for what's happening on the road and your road courses that you're taking them on and the challenges thereupon. And that is an improvement. So our school's ready to go with that October 1st. And due to some pressure in the industry, that was delayed until next July. So there was a 9-month reprieve for any schools. We were all set to go. All of our schools had everything lined up to go to enter into Paris, which is the internal workings at MCU to make sure that we are in compliance with what we're supposed to be teaching. So we are a little bit set back by that because we are all ready to go with it. And based on what's happening in the industry and concerns and complaints about it, plus the fact that the MELT program is being revisited right now, they decided to change that and delay it until July 1st of 2026.
I was going to say,
John, I'll pass to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, the problem that I see there is wasn't there already a curriculum in place, with all schools to say, well, to tweak it from July to October was like, yeah, it's no big deal. A little more documentation to kind of confirm what we're doing. And now this other group that we know of that's put pressure on to say, oh, no, we need more time. I'm like, if you were operating properly to begin with, you would have had all your ducks in a row anyway. It wouldn't matter. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to take into consideration here, being on the school side of things, is some of the schools are being operated pretty close to the line with the actual owner of the school, who may be participating as the manager or potentially even as an instructor, which I know is a fairly common thing with the smaller schools. So you may have somebody that's fighting to keep their school alive right now, because this is a very trying time now.
Sure,
things have slowed down considerably.
Yeah.
And they'll be out in the truck for maybe 8 to 10 hours a day, and then they have to do the administration on it. And so some of the smaller schools would be one of the ones that would be crying out the most on this. We don't have that kind of problem with our schools because we're set up in a normal way where most of our schools are very long-standing and have an awful lot of background and ability, and they've been able to work out the management structure and the administration to a more feasible degree, even in a slowdown like we're experiencing now.
Right.
So if I can ask, because we're I think we could talk about this honestly for hours. There's so many avenues we can go by, and my head is just zinging, but I'm trying to stay focused on my audience. And one of the things we repeatedly hear is the cost of getting your MELT. So I got my license a really long time ago. Most of our audience wasn't even an inkling in their parents' mind yet. And I got it at Fanshawe College. It was done through the Ontario Safety League, and I paid $4,500 back then. Realistically, now, just based on MELT, if we've got an applicant who's looking at all these schools out there and they're shopping on price, and we live in a world of take the cheapest price that you can, but what's a realistic expectation for a driver to pay and get MELT, the minimum MELT, do you think, based on overhead structures and maintaining a truck and all of those things? So what should an applicant be considering?
Well, I think anybody that looks at trying to do a MELT course at $3,500 to even $4,000 is fooling themselves that they're going to be trained properly and get the amount of training that they should be based on what the criteria is. We did a scan of our schools and asked for them to give us feedback on how much it cost them to run an hour out on the road for training. And the cost ran anywhere from $108 to $127 per hour out on the road, based on where you're located, what you're paying your instructors, and the type of power unit you have. If you look at MELT, 32 hours on the road, $3,500 is not even covering that. So it's covering none of the rest of it either. So if you're thinking 3,500 is going to get you a proper course, there's no way in the world that that's achievable in this day and age with the costs the way they are. And to put a real low cost on doing a proper course, I think you're looking at anywhere from 6,000 up. And I know our proper courses are somewhere around 10,000 for the 200-hour course. And that gives you a much better ease into the industry. If you had that, that was the type of course I did when I became licensed. I did a full course, and it's much easier to get a job then. It's much sounder practice to go out on the road when you have that many basic skills covered. And we're not just talking about being able to steer and shift, but we're also talking about the knowledge of how to actually run a proper truck, to be compliant, be confident out on the road, make deliveries on time, to do your pickups on time, and to deal with the customers the way they want to, because every driver is the face of that company when they're dealing with the customers.
That's right. It's a customer service industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, from an insurance perspective, it's been known by many insurers that the TTSAO 200-hour program is very accepted by the insurance industry. So as a new driver coming in, if you can demonstrate that you completed the 200-hour course through a TTSAO school, it makes it much easier for you to get that job with that motor carrier, or allowing that motor carrier to accept you as a new entrant into a training program of that organization.
Yeah, John, that is exactly right. And when I came out, we were given a 2-year background of being acceptable to insurance carriers. And there were a few insurance carriers around there that were abiding by that 2-year. And even to this date, there's the odd one that might be giving you credit for 1 year of experience right now.
Yep.
As long as you have that 200-hour course. And that does help immeasurably when you're looking at maintaining somebody's pricing for their insurance program.
So from a safety manager perspective, when I put my safety manager hat, thinking back to my days, what I've heard today is, if I've got a driver who's been licensed for essentially 5 years or less, if they were not trained at a TTSAO school, I have an obligation to determine whether or not that driver actually met the criteria, particularly if I'm thinking about putting him in the US. Because if he's involved in any sort of collision in the US and it goes to a lawyer, this is all over the news. The lawyer is going to go dig in and say, where did you get your license? Oh, Mr. Employer, let's all take it down the nuclear path. John, from the insurance side, am I describing this?
Oh, definitely. This is the latest news that's come out is opening up that query and that concern with insurance providers right now, going, oh my God, I never thought this was going to happen. I never even thought about this, right? That a driver who we're insuring, been driving for 4 years, now all of a sudden gets a letter to say, hey, your license is suspended. We need you to retest because there are questions about how you got your license or the school that you went through.
And Philip, where are we going to find out which schools are TTSAO certified? Do you have a website? Is there somewhere where we can go and as a safety manager and say, okay, driver, you say you got hired here, TTSAO school, yes or no?
Yeah, so we do have a website, and that's ttsao.com, and we have our schools listed there. And you're bringing up a pretty big item here with what's going on in the industry right now. One thing we want to set up that we've talked about doing in the last month now is to set up a portal where the carriers could go and check on who's got the transcripts coming out of the TTSAO for verification purposes.
Awesome.
And
yes.
I don't
Very
even think
valuable.
we're thinking of charging that, but I think that portal would be very, very good for the insurers as well as for the carriers.
I think that's a fantastic initiative. You got to let us know when that gets set up. We're going to put it out there. Absolutely. That's the first that is the first usable piece of information that from a safety manager's perspective
Yep.
I've seen, because the MTO's out there saying, we're going to send the notifications to the driver, and Mr. Employer, you have no rights to be included in this. And you can understand that from a certain perspective between privacy and the fact that they don't know where they work. But you've got to give the carrier the opportunity to do their due diligence. Because, I mean, right now, what I'm suggesting to my clients is, you know what, here's a questionnaire letter that you got to send to all of your drivers who have been licensed for this period of time, and say, have you been asked for that? Have you been notified? Or if you get notified in the future, you need to tell us. But we know that there's a percentage of them that aren't going to do that.
True. But I think this is something we would like to do and get the retrospective as the people that have come through over the last number of years since this has started to be a rollback of 4 or 5 years of licensing to see who's actually got a responsible training course under their belt before they're licensed. And we're talking about getting this portal set up so that we can actually roll the transcripts through there, and these people can have it up there. We'll just have to find some sort of password for them to go into, so we don't have anybody going in there monkeying around with the transcripts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's good. Well, because I know there's going to be guys who are going to be subject to this situation. That 80% that you mentioned, Rick, and maybe they've been driving for 4 years, and maybe the carriers they've worked for, they've done very well, and they've got some extra training and mentoring, and it's been a great experience for that driver. However, because of the school that he went through that's now gone debunked or something, now they're getting a notice from the MTO saying, hey, you've got to retest because we got concerns. That driver, that company should not be worried knowing how well that driver is performing today, and if he's been provided that mentoring, that finishing training as he moved along. His confidence should be very high to go, not a problem, MTO. I'm willing to show you how good I am at what I've learned out of this. And I think that's what the MTO wants to see is go, if you're good, show me you're good, and we'll make sure your license is stated as such. But I think, again, what Philip is talking about with regards to getting those transcripts would be something that would be a huge due diligence for anybody, no matter whether this guy's been driving for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it be. If you went and got your melt, I want to know where you got your license from.
Yep.
And due diligence on top of that, the reference checks of the previous employers. If you work for two-bit carriers, you should be questioning the validity of this driver's ability. We shouldn't be waiting just until we see we get a letter. It's like, no, I need to know more, mister. I not only your previous employers, but I want to know where you got your license from. I want to know how well you passed it. Is this a reputable school and whatnot? So, because everything's going to stem backwards.
Yeah, and then I think go ahead, Phil.
And John, as you're pointing out, we are foundational to people entering the industry. We are the greatest foundational piece that you can go back to check and verify.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, to your point, an awful lot of graduates start by working for an owner operator that's got a truck on with a fleet. And when you do the reference check, they don't give you the fleet, they give you the owner operator, because that's the employer, and you have to dig deeper, right? You have to look, and that right there is a red flag in my mind.
Well, and you know what? There's a lot of people out there that go, I've got 30 years experience in the industry, and I'm going to teach this young guy how to drive a truck. But the problem is, if you weren't properly trained to do the job yourself, and you've got a whole bunch of bad habits, you're just sharing those bad habits with the new recruit. So, you're not helping that person. So we need to make sure that when we mentor properly, adequately, meet the requirements of the law, best practices that we can possibly put into play.
John, just to alleviate your concern on that, with the current stakeholder group that I'm a member of working with MTO on the redo of melt, driver or instructor, I should say, instructor certification is going to be mandatory. So they're going to have to take a course in how to teach, and that transfer of knowledge has to be the key element of how you take that information and give it to somebody that they can use it properly and it's coming from the correct source and the correct manner.
Right.
So Instructor certification is going to be mandatory here. It's already
Yep.
come through in Alberta. Ontario will be doing it as well. We're talking about that right now.
Yeah, and that'll be good because then carriers can send drivers that want to be a driver trainer to that same course to be an
Yeah.
instructor. Because unfortunately, I think many of us have seen on social media too many incidences where the new driver does his first trip and then the owner goes, "Okay, now you can train." What are you talking about? I just got my license 6 months ago and I just did my first trip with you to the US. Yep, well, you didn't have any problems, you didn't get any fines, so you can train the next guy. And you're putting somebody in a very terrifying position.
Yeah, and I'm going to expand that a little bit and hear, or I'll tell you that I hear that that even happens at the school level. Somebody just passed their
Mhm.
license exam and they come back to that school and that school says, "Oh, can you go out in the yard and train these guys how to do proper Schedule 1?"
Sure, no problem. Any day.
So,
Yeah.
in
God.
today's environment, Philip, you're just going to have to consider how you control the documentation so that it's not fraudulently created,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah.
the degree of fraud in the industry and everywhere right now is mind-numbing. So I think we're coming to the end of our
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
I want to ask you, this is an opinion, and I know it's an opinion, but I think it's valid. The I've written several articles lately about the quality or the lack of quality that we're seeing behind the commercial vehicle. The the frequency and the severity and the types of collisions that we're seeing, the overtaking on double yellow linings up north, the instances John and I did a cover on hitting the Brantford Bridge, which seems to have a target painted on it. Um, just an opinion. Do you think that the number of drivers that we're seeing involved in these accidents on the highway can be directly correlated to the issues of these fraudulent schools?
Well, up to that, I have no doubt that there's a definite element. Now, whether they're totally to blame for all of them, that might be another
Nope.
question.
But is there a correlate? Do you believe there's a
There's a
correlation?
correlation.
Philip, we'll give you the opportunity for some closing comments from your perspective that you'd like to share with our audience. Anything that you'd like to get out there as we wrap up this conversation?
Yeah, I think that we're coming into a new stage of definite compliance and oversight here. A lot of what is happening in the United States has sort of set the mark on this, and there's like a red circle around safe driving of the transports these days, and that is going to filter across the border to here because we do so many cross-border runs that we have to be in line and in step with what's going on there, including the English language proficiency and all of the non-domiciled CDLs. That sort of situation is going on there, and how the industry has been susceptible to a lot of improperly licensed drivers, which we're now encountering here in
Yeah.
Ontario. And we have to be much more mindful of what's going on in the industry overall and be much more compliant in our oversight and bring the hammer down in some situations.
Mhm.
There's the two people that were found guilty in court last year of operating two fraudulent schools in Cornwall and in Quebec. And they were found guilty in January and they have yet to be sentenced. There better be a
Wow.
meaningful sentence coming out of that in order to create some deterrence on this.
Please tell me those schools are no longer operating.
They're no longer operating.
Okay, good deal. Jeez.
And we don't even think a chameleon school has popped up in its place.
Oh, really? Wow, that's surprising. Yes.
Well, that's good to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
John, what about yourself? Anything you'd like to add in the wrap up here, other than what an amazing guest Phil's been,
Well, you know what? The information has been awesome. I think we can sum it up by we reap what we sow, and it is coming back to roost finally. And
Yeah.
hopefully, as Philip has said, the oversight is coming into play. There's no doubt that what's happening in the U.S. is just going to put a spotlight on what's happening in Canada as well, and kind of show a bit more of the underbelly of this industry. And hopefully, we can get this thing straightened out sooner than later.
And
Yeah,
safety
it's
man.
not the industry that we all grew up in
No,
and that we all
no,
started
No.
participating
no.
as drivers. It's gone off the rails and we
Yep.
have to pull it back on
Yep.
very strongly at this point.
Yep. Yep.
So for our safety managers, where'd your driver go to school?
Mhm.
Was it TTSAO? And if not, dig deep, folks, because this issue is way more than 180 to 300 drivers. We're
Yeah.
talking thousands. We're talking thousands.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Phil.
Nice
Been
to
great
meet you.
having you on.
Yes. Thank you.
Stay tuned
This was good.
because next month we're going to be talking about customs.
Oh God, customs, U.S. customs, Canada customs, or are we talking like about Scottish customs and
No, we're not talking
are they-
about going and sipping the finest scotch in the bar.
no,
We're talking
no,
about
no.
that funny little booth at the bridge.
Yeah, funny little booth. Love them. So,
Don't we all remember when we had to clear our own customs crossing the border and you're sitting
Uh-huh.
at the customs broker's office and they're ignoring you for about an hour and a half?
oh yeah. Oh, remember those days? Long, long time ago. Or on the U.S. side. I remember going to the U.S. side, not knowing what you were doing, and the U.S. officer yelling at you, "You got to get in that line over there, kid. Like, do as you're told." I didn't know. Nobody told me. Well, get somebody to show you.
Go see the
Yeah.
broker.
Yeah, exactly. Go
Go
see the broker.
broker.
Come back. And they come back and they didn't do anything, and they go, "Stamp, see you, bye." Anyway, awesome. Well, thank you again, Philip. This has been good. This was good information. So,
Well, very enjoyable time devoting some information to you guys and having you go
Cool.
out there so that we have a greater understanding in the marketplace.
definitely.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. We hope you found today's materials to be useful and you can put them to work. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And if you've got questions from today's material, or maybe you're just looking to improve your safety and compliance game, please feel free to reach out to either me or John. And remember, you can't manage what you don't monitor. The key to compliant profitability is just one phone call away. So until next time, put the phone down while you drive and keep your eyes on the prize.